Hello again. Today's video is going to be me sharing my journey and experiences of the different therapeutic approaches to healing, the different tools and practices that I've learned over the years, and the relevance that they have had in my life or could have in someone's life. This to me isn't necessarily the order that they have to go in for everybody. I do think that these things show up as they're meant to, depending on the person, depending on the journey. It doesn't have to look the same for two people. And I don't actually know if my journey and the different approaches I took, I don't know if there is a particular order or hierarchy to them. It's just what happened for me, and it might give you a sense of when it's a good time to use each one of these. The first therapeutic approach that I stumbled upon was in the form of questioning my thoughts and beliefs, and this was with the work of Byron Katie. So this was quite a wake-up call for me. This healing approach was my initial spiritual awakening. I had been in conflict with my family for a very long time, particularly my parents, for many years, and there was this last conflict, and I started reading about psychology and about how thoughts create our experiences, and I was just I started to slowly become drawn into awakening in that way, in realizing that there's things that we can change about ourselves to better our lives and to better our perspective of the world. And so I had began this homeschooling or rather unschooling journey with my children, which meant that I was meeting a lot of new people, and I started to open up to spirituality a little bit, but I didn't really know what that was still at this time. So I met a lady who was also unschooling her children. She was part of an unschooling forum and group, and we got chatting, and she had introduced me to this work of Byron Katie. So Byron Katie is a spiritual teacher, and she helps you. She designed this tool to help you ask yourself if the thoughts you're thinking, how do you know that they're really true? And how does it feel to hold this perspective? And what if I held a different perspective, and how does that feel? And do you think that that new perspective could be just as true as the one causing negative feelings? So I ended up doing a session with this new friend of mine who she'd written a book, and she had been doing this work of Byron Katie for many years, and she helped me work on a belief that I was holding about one of my children. And after that, I was just shocked awake. So I was awakened to this idea that I am not my thoughts. I'm somebody that holds these thoughts, but when I can separate from them and I can step back and look at them and question them, I'm not the one, I'm not the thought. And so up until that time, I very much identified myself as my thoughts. But through this practice, I realized that I am just the empty space that holds these thoughts. And once I could get clear on them and realize that they may not be true and that I can choose different thoughts, it just completely blew my mind wide open, and my heart opened as well. And that was my initial experience of spiritual awakening, having the experience that I am this neutral space beyond thought that's unaffected. So only the thoughts can cause me pain and stress. what I am underneath cannot be harmed and is free. I did that for about 2 years, and then I ended up following teachings like Eckhart Tolle and Bentino Massara, and these were more to do with really learning more about what presence is and the now consciousness, being in the present moment. So as this progressed through my journey, I realized that, okay, I'm not my thoughts, but also that I've been living in this past or a future with my thoughts. But there's actually a present moment that is unaffected and never changes, and that I can let emotions and circumstances come and go, but it doesn't define who I am. I don't have to latch on to them and become them. I am the empty space behind. So this was a progression of that initial awakening of just really coming to learn to separate myself as my identity and become the witness behind everything, and to view my circumstances as not me. It's just coming and going through my being. And so this really helped jolt me out even more of my ego and identifying as this person with all these problems and struggles. However, as time went on, I started to feel again the unhappiness underneath, and I started to become triggered once again. So this initial awakening, it lasted for a while, and I was so happy. Nothing bothered me. I was on top of the world. I was free at last. But I wasn't really, because all of my childhood traumas were still there. They hadn't been addressed or healed. I didn't even realize that they were still there. I thought I was healed. At last, I was free and happy. So I began to feel drawn towards teachings of Teal Swan and like inner child work and healing. So I had also met some women that were doing deep meditations and helping people connect to that, what's deeper than stillness. So, we have the witness, me, the witness, viewing everything coming and going, but who holds the witness? So the deepest darkness that there is within myself, that's even beyond awareness, I was learning to become in touch with that. And at the same time, I was drawn to these teachings around the inner child. So I was doing a lot of deep inner work and healing a lot of my childhood trauma viscerally through the body. And this sort of opened up a box of every single emotion that I'd ever had and had never addressed, just came to the surface. So for the next, say, 4 years, I worked very deeply on myself. And after some time, because each of these things, they kind of came to a natural ending, not an ending, but like to where they just weren't working for me anymore. And I felt that I was going deeper and deeper and deeper. And I don't know now if that's the case, because I kind of went, a lot of people tend to start at the mind level, like I did with questioning the thoughts, and then they sort of travel deeper into the body and the lower chakras and the things and the womb work, and they start to really travel deeper and deeper. So I thought that's what was happening to me, is I was just opening doors that were going deeper and deeper. So I did all of this, and then that started to sort of come to a point where it just wasn't helping anymore. And that's where I found Maya Joy, who was doing psychic readings at the time. And I went down the path of receiving guidance about my life path. So this is a bit different to doing inner work in the body and the mind. This was sort of receiving answers from the spirit world, answers from my spirit guides, things that I probably wouldn't have been able to find in myself doing this inner work, not unless I did it for like many, many more years. But I was just getting impatient and I wanted more and more, and I needed to go deeper and deeper, and I needed to heal faster and faster. So I decided to give these readings a try, and it was amazing because I actually received insights about my personal journey. This was no longer a group thing where everybody was meditating together and going through the same sort of process. This was tailored just to me. I was receiving guidance just about my own spiritual path and journey and what I was meant to do, and it really answered so many questions for me. So I haven't mentioned what each one's good for others. So I'll go back a little bit. So the questioning, the thinking, with the work of Byron Katie is going to be good for initially separating from your thoughts and realizing that you are not your thoughts. You are the one that can see your thoughts, so you can separate yourself from them. The practice of being in the present moment and realizing that I'm not my circumstances, and feelings and emotions and things can come and go, but I'm the witness. That's really good for that initial separation from the ego or the identifying with circumstances and emotions. So then as I moved into the inner child healing, and the meditations, that's going to be good for reconnecting with the body. So it's all of these things are necessary and needed, and it's okay to have to use different ones at different times in your life. So they're all equally important. So as I moved from one to the other, it wasn't because I realized one of them was wrong. It was because I had done so much work in that particular area. Like, I'd done so much work with the mind that I was ready to move on to reconnecting with my emotions and the body. So this is going to be good to get back in touch with what emotion is and what feelings are. And because before then I was all just up here and like, oh, I'm free, I'm happy, I don't have any feelings. But then the feelings just came knocking, and it was like, you can't bypass this part of you. You can't bypass the human experience, the human emotions. So the years of meditation and inner child healing that I did was really helpful to reconnect to my body and emotions, and boy, did they come up. So then as I was led to the psychic readings, and this was a whole different level. So this wasn't, again, I don't know if this was higher or deeper. It was just moving into the phase of, I am a soul. It's not just all up here, la, like, oh, I feel free and spiritual. It was like, hang on, I'm an actual soul that planned my life and incarnated into a human body, and I have lessons to learn, and I have spirit guides. So it's not that these are all different realities and one is more true than the other. They all exist simultaneously. So just as there is a physical realm, there is a spirit realm. That it's not one or the other. There's different levels of reality that I've been able to tap into, and what these different teachings and healing modalities introduced me to, but they all exist simultaneously. And none of them are more important or less important than the other. And, they all work in different ways at different times in our lives. So what the psychic readings did was helped me realize that I do have goals as a human being. I had to sort of come back from this, like, chasing this spiritual life and living as a spiritual being. I had to realize that I am a human being. I do have goals to fulfill. I do have karma to heal. I do have a journey that I'm on, and that everything that's happening and has been happening so far, all the trauma, everything is meant to be. I chose it. I'm not a victim. And just as the meditations and working in the body helped me realize that these spiritual experiences that I was having that felt very much up in the mind, I had to bring them down into the body. I had to embody these feelings and live as this spiritual awakening in the world with other human beings in relationships. So that sort of really grounded me a lot. So it's like I started coming out of the body into another awareness, like, oh wow, I'm not my body. Okay, I am something bigger, I'm something more. Then I had to, so that initial spark of coming out and awakening, I then had to slowly bring that back down into the body and live that as a human being. So that's why I was brought back down into the body, into the emotions, into what's my life purpose. I need to go and live that. I realized my journey wasn't about chasing spiritual experiences. It was about just living as a human being. So, I was this human being stuck in this body, and I separated from that, realized who I really am, started to bring that back down into my life, into my body, and living that in the world. This brings me to another point. I've never felt drawn to using psychedelics or, anything like that to bring on spiritual experiences. That has not been my path, and it is for others, and that is a doorway, and I do believe in that, but that's just not been my journey. My journey has been one of very hard work. I like to be aware of all the steps I'm taking and how I got there, which brings me to what I was drawn to next in my awakening journey and healing journey, which was working with a therapist. So I feel like it's not that I went backwards or forwards. I feel like I did a bit of like a 360, and I don't even know if I'm at the end of I'm definitely not at the end of my journey, but this is just how it's been easy to describe for me. Is a lot of people will start with, the therapy, and then they will go deeper into spirituality. And I've had a lot of therapists tell me this, that they have awakened to spirituality much later than their initial training in the mind and healing through thought therapies and therapeutic approaches and stuff. And a lot of healers I worked with as well saw therapy and counselling as a first step, it's sort of come as a later step for me. So after all these spiritual experiences and feelings and working with my emotions, there was something missing. I needed to understand what was happening to me. And this is where therapy came in. So with therapy, I was able to go back and actually work with specific memories in my childhood and understand why I was behaving the way I was in the world, and that there was nothing wrong with me. It was because of things that had happened to me as a child. And so working through the body and healing on a visceral level, but being fully aware of the entire process. So being fully conscious of what traumas had happened to me and consciously processing them, because as children we switch that part off. Well, this was very helpful for me. And so I did spend a few years with a therapist working on all the bad things that had happened to me as a child. And again, that came to a natural ending where I sort of felt like that just wasn't really doing it for me anymore. What I've started to feel is that where I popped out, had these experiences, slowly came back into the body, I'm actually starting to feel more like a rising again back out. And now I don't mean out of the body, I mean back out of the deep trauma healing and more into the therapeutic approaches that are very grounded and human-like and earthly. So I'm not somebody that is comfortable living in the spiritual realms here on earth. I like to visit them. I like to be aware of it. But I am somebody that likes to feel very humanly and very earthly and very grounded. And that's where I moved from therapy, which is more deeper and more like work, into counseling. Counseling is what some people are going to see as the very, very human-like approach, talk therapy, if you will. And it's gotten quite a bad rap in the spiritual community. Talk therapy doesn't work, I've been told. But I've never actually done true talk therapy because I jumped straight into the deep end with my spiritual journey. But now I'm at that level, and it is absolutely refreshing to just be able to be a human being, one human to another, talk about my feelings and not be analysed or told what the answers are, to be asked questions that help me to find answers within myself. So counselling is going to be good for people who who have sort of either done a lot of the healing work, but they're just tired of doing the deep inner work and they don't feel that they need that anymore, and they just need to get out their feelings and they just need somebody to listen. That's going to be good for you. Now, as I said, each of these things can happen at different times for everybody. So there isn't, whichever you choose to do first is going to have its natural progression and natural order for you and your journey. This is just what was meant for me. So I sort of came up and out of the body and had a realization, and then I had to come back in and do the inner work. And that's progressed to being more and more human, not more and more spiritual, not more and more away from life and into heaven, more and more bringing those realizations and experiences, fully being grounded in my human life and just sort of forgetting that there's even a spiritual journey and just living my life as though there never was one. And that's actually truly how I feel like it's meant to be, because if we had the perfect childhood and the perfect life, which is not going to be possible for everybody, then there would be no need to go seeking on a journey and go through all these different healing modalities. But unfortunately, most of us on the planet are going to be looking for that because we were traumatized and our wholeness was fractured in some way. So that, whatever journey that takes you on is going to be just right for you. I hope that you have found this video helpful in some way. If you want a breakdown of what I've just shared, all of this is in my book that you can get on Amazon for cheap. And yeah, I hope that you have a wonderful day. Sending love. Bye.